Nations galore.
Oh, time. Did you mention the time? Yes, you did, didn't you?
No.
Oh, didn't you? It's 18 minutes past 6. It's Monday the 10th of February. The death of 6 cyclists in just 2 weeks in London last November put cycling safety in the spotlight and also prompted members on the Commons Transport Select Committee to look at the issue. Today, Olympic gold medalist Chris Boardman will present a 10-point plan to MPs to get more people cycling. A study on behalf of British cycling says the NHS would save £250 million a year if 1 in 10 journeys was made by bike. We're going to speak to Chris Boardman a little later on in the programme, but first we're going to speak to Donnachadh McCarthy from the group Stop Killing Cyclists. Good morning to you, Donnachadh. What should the government be doing to make it easier for people to cycle?
Two main things. We need to start investing in proper cycling infrastructure so that children and adults and pensioners can feel safe cycling on the road. And the second thing, they need to start requiring councils to ensure that when they're doing new developments that they will include space for cycling in those developments and junctions.
Now, we did see last week more people kind of wobbling their way around London on the so-called Boris bikes because of the tube strike. Isn't there going to be an inevitable increase in injuries and maybe even deaths if more people cycle?
Cycling and walking are equally safe or dangerous. For the amount of kilometres walked in London, there's the same amount of injuries and deaths as for cycling. However, if we actually put an infrastructure in, like they have in Holland, it becomes infinitely safer.
Should cyclists pay road tax in return for safer roads? I only ask that question because every time we talk about cycling, many drivers ring in, even those who actually do cycle, and say, why don't they pay road tax? Then we wouldn't be quite so aggrieved.
No driver pays road tax. Drivers pay emissions tax. They pay a tax for the pollution.
Well, you pay for your the little disc at the front.
Yeah, and that pays for the emissions, the pollutions the car produces.
Right.
There's a gradated scale of that, to be sure, but actually it's effectively money that's meant to be diverted into upkeep of roads. And I suppose the point is,
no, it's not. It's actually the money that pays for the roads comes from general taxation that we all pay, including cyclists. The taxes cars pay is for the damage that they do to society. We have to remember it's not just the 14 cyclists that are killed every year in London by cars, and the 90 people that are killed, pedestrians that are killed by cars. There are 4,000 people die from heart, lung and cancers from cars. Cars are a huge impact on our economy. If we actually invest in cycling, the economy does infinitely well. So we have to start looking at what's happening at Cornwall. Have we no idea what's happening with climate change and what the contribution transport is giving to society?
But we also have the other side of the argument, don't we, Donnachadh, which is, setting aside whether or not people, and some people don't accept the notions of climate change, set that aside for 1 minute. We constantly read in the newspapers, great news for the economy, car sales are up. Good news for the economy, car production's up. So there's a disconnect, isn't there, in some ways between...
Hang on, can you actually say today when the London barrier has had to come down 5 times in 10 days, that we can put climate change aside? We can't.
Well, there are some people...
But taking up your point about the economy, absolutely right. Every pound you invest in a motorway puts £2 back into the economy. Every pound you put into cycling puts around £9 to £10 back into the economy. It saves the NHS, it does good for shops. People have to wake up. Cycling is positive for London.
I don't think there's any dispute about that. I suppose the bigger point is whether or not we're never going to see a day, are we, when the car is banned from London? It ain't going to happen. Now, maybe emissions will improve. I hope and pray they will. I'm driving an electric car, and you're absolutely right. I don't pay any so-called road tax on it. But the problem is people need things delivered, things need to move, and that can only be done, surely, by motor transport.
We're not saying to ban the vehicle completely, but if you look at other countries like Holland or Denmark, up to 50% of the journeys are done by bicycle. And the cities are more pleasant to live in. The shops are easier to get to.
It's not really comparing like with like, though, is it, Donnachadh? I've lived in Amsterdam for a very short while. It's flat. It's incredibly small. You could virtually walk from one end of Amsterdam to the other in probably 20 minutes. It isn't it really isn't comparable to London.
London, we talk about London being made up of villages.
It used to be, but it's not anymore, is it really? It's an enormous conglomeration.
In terms of the journeys we undertake, it is.
Except we spoke to somebody...
Between 2 to 5 miles.
I know, but we spoke to somebody on Friday, I think it was, when the tube strike was on, or Thursday, and this person regularly commuted from Kent all the way up to Hackney. Now, that isn't a journey that's doable by bike. And this person would normally use public transport, so they were very aggrieved by the tube strike because they had to use their car. But that isn't a journey you can cycle on, is it really?
So what about the kids in Southwark? Kids in Southwark, something like 30 to 40% of them are now fat. They're clinically fat because the roads aren't safe for them to cycle on. 2% of them cycle to school when actually 30% of them want to. We have to wake up. The motor car can't rule our streets. We have to put it back in its place. We can't ban it. But Holland and Denmark, cities like Copenhagen, Amsterdam, Berlin, why do we have to say in London we can't do it? Why can't we say we can do it? And we can have a vision of a beautiful city that's safe to get around.
Donnachadh, thank you very much. That's Donnachadh McCarthy from the group Stop Killing Cyclists.